Mr Deputy Speaker, look, this is the Greens have stood here so many times in private members' times and over the years talking about how we stand for the community, how we stand for a vision for Tasmania which supports the Clean Green brand, which was originated by the great work and visionary thinking of Christine Milne, the leader of the Greens, previous leader of the Greens. The community who want to be able to live in their environment and fundamentally make decisions about the land that they live in, the waters that they live next to, the marine environment that they love so much, and they want to have a say, Mr Deputy Speaker. They want to have a say in what happens to the place that they live in, the place that their children will inherit, the place that their children's children's children will live in and hopefully love living in, because it's a functioning environment, it's a community which is full of harmony, and it is a place which provides people with work which is sustainable, which is in harmony with both the community and the environment that nurtures the very basis of community and life on the planet. So why we're here today, Mr Deputy Speaker, is because I think it's pretty clear to everyone in Tasmania that this government has put the interests of big development by privately owned share-listed corporations, which first and foremost have the interests of their shareholders first and are required under Australian law to put the interests of their shareholders first. And they do that, and they do that very successfully. And this government has, for the last 5 years, been quite transparent in flying a flag and championing the interests of the salmon industry. The Greens have no truck with salmon farming. The Greens have always supported sustainable salmon farming, just like we support sustainable pig farming, sustainable agriculture, sustainable industry of all sorts. But the problem that we have is that we have had for 5 years this Liberal government championing the interests of a private share-listed company, 3 private share-listed companies, and failing to protect the marine environment, failing to listen to the communities who are affected, failing to give a voice to the other commercial industries and businesses, the other livelihoods that are affected by their hell-bent support for the expansion of the salmon industry. The salmon industry in Tasmania has been in free fall. Has suffered a series of catastrophic collapses. And let's just go back to Macquarie Harbour, Mr Deputy Speaker, because Macquarie Harbour was the crucible, I suppose, of what could have been a sustainable salmon industry, and it shows where it went wrong. And where it went wrong was it decided to grow to double and then double and double. And it's this idea that that the Liberals brought to government when they came in 2015 of doubling the salmon industry, as though a notional figure of doubling is based on something is possible without having unintended consequences. But the problem for the community and the problem for other commercial interests and the problem fundamentally for the marine environment is that those unintended consequences have never been investigated properly, and there is no process, legislative framework and opportunity for independent scientific assessment to make sure that the unintended consequences of the doubling and then doubling and now further doubling of the salmon farm industry are investigated, and that the industry is checked to make sure that the resources, it is the publicly owned waterways that salmon farms have been exploiting around the state, that those waterways can sustain the level of nutrients, the marine debris and all the other activities of, all the other outputs of marine farming in the waterways. So, Madam Speaker, Mr Deputy Speaker, the motion that we have before us today acknowledges that the Hodgman Liberal government have supported A, current stocking levels of salmon in Macquarie Harbour, B, the expansion of fish farm operations into Oakhampton Bay, C, enlivening of a decade-old fish farm lease in Norfolk Bay, D, the exploration of fish farm expansions off King Island, and E, the large-scale expansion of salmon farming into Storm Bay. Mr Deputy Speaker, we don't have anything like a sustainable salmon industry in Tasmania, and the problem is that we've got an industry that is promoted by the government, the same government that is responsible for protecting the marine environment, for providing opportunities for consultation with communities, and for allegedly providing a scientific assessment. But instead, we've got a lot of money spent on expensive spin and marketing, and the impact it's a fairy tale of a sustainable salmon industry. And we know it's a fairy tale, Mr Deputy Speaker, because the chickens are coming home to roost. And unfortunately, this is going to have a devastating impact on people's livelihoods, but we know that it's already having a devastating impact on the marine environment. So what we're seeing is that organisations like the Australian Marine Conservation Society has now done a formal red listing of the salmon industry. And what that means, Mr Deputy Speaker, is that they have effectively now told, through the Australian Sustainable Seafood Guide, they've told consumers the truth about salmon farming in Tasmania. So on the one hand, we have a government spin that is talking about sustainable salmon growing, salmon farming, but we've got organisations, independent organisations, independent from Tasmania, because it is not possible in Tasmania to be able to be able to access the information and to be able to have processes that are robust and free from the influence of an industry which is too close to government in the decisions it's making. And so we know, on the basis of the sustained harm that has been inflicted on the marine environment, including the dead zones in Macquarie Harbour, including the damage to the World Heritage Area values in Macquarie Harbour from the intensive stocking from Tassal and its refusal to remove fish from pens, even when it was directed to do so by the EPA. We know that we have a government which would rather allow a company to set up on the east coast of Tasmania, one of the driest places in the state, and farm salmon in Oakhampton Bay, which is never had salmon farming there before. It is a beautiful place right next to the Mercury Passage. That farm was never supported by the community. And on top of that, we hear today that the construction of the pipeline along the Prosser River is going ahead. It will be drawing water in the first instance from the Hobbs Lagoon and from the water supply for East Coast residents, part of which will be drawing through that pipeline to bathe fish for Tassal as part of their farming operations. So this is a government that at every step puts the needs of the industry before the needs of the community. And there is no opportunity for the community to have engagement in the process and people in good faith try and engage with the EPA, the Marine Farming Branch, the Marine Farming Review panels on the massive expansion that is occurring in Storm Bay. That massive expansion, Mr Deputy Speaker, is effectively wrapping a plastic curtain of fish farms and the nutrients that come out of them right around Storm Bay, from the east coast of Bruny up to the south of Betsy Island, around Wedge Island, and all the way around parts of the Tasman Peninsula. Even areas which have never had salmon farms in there before have been opened up for salmon farming without any community consultation. What do you mean, come on? That's exactly what happened in Norfolk Bay. No consultation in Norfolk Bay. Nothing. Mr Broad says, no, oh, yes, that's right. Remember Norfolk Bay? Remember all the residents at Carlton River, Dodgers Ferry, Primrose Sands. All of those people, all the people on the Tasman Peninsula, didn't get to have a say about Norfolk Bay. No say, never been salmon farms there, on top of an area which is known to have red handfish. It's a beautiful marine sanctuary. It's an area which is restocking with fish naturally because they have been protecting the area to allow fish stocks to establish again. This is a place that had a massive community flotilla on the water only last year because Huon Aquaculture decided that would be a good spot for them to dump their diseased fish into, and that was their biosecurity measure. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, the comment by Mr Broad exactly articulates the problem that we have here. On the one hand, we've got a Liberal government who has given succour to the industry for the last 5 years and has facilitated their massive expansion into Storm Bay, up into King Island, to the east coast of Tasmania, and back into areas that the industry, with their own spin, had promised that they would be leaving. The very argument, the basis for the massive salmon expansion that is still just starting into Storm Bay in southern Tasmania, the very basis for that was that the industry had recognised that they would move out to deep ocean areas and get out of inshore areas. But what we've got, Tassal's going back to Brabazon Point, back right up into the upper reaches of the Huon River, an incredibly shallow area, an area they promised to vacate. Yet this is not an industry which is prepared to stop. This is not an industry that's prepared to listen, and this is not a government that's going to stand up for the industry. This is not a government that's going to stand up for the community. And so what we have is flabby, useless laws that clearly do not protect the interests of the industry, and they certainly don't protect the marine environment. The whole farce of the Marine Farming Review Panel hearings for Storm Bay cruelly showed to the community, the people who turned up and made an effort to present their views and their concerns, the impacts on their livelihoods, the impacts on their businesses, their deep, deep concern for the huge amount of marine debris which is all around the state, causing great damage to the marine environment by the amount of plastics, microplastics, from fish farm detritus that is going into the marine environment every single day and washing up onto the beaches. But people are so concerned about all the plastic from marine farm equipment that is in the bottom of the waterways. That can't all wash up. After the May storms last year, we had Huon Aquaculture's farms, so-called fortress farms in Storm Bay, break up. These are the things. This is the equipment which we've been told by the industry is designed for storm conditions, and at the very first major storm, they break up. Hundreds of thousands of fish disappear, and floating debris all around Bruny Island and Storm Bay. Incredibly dangerous for boaters and people in the river. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, the point is that this is an industry on steroids, and it is a complete lie, lies on lies, to say that this is about looking after the interests of workers in regional communities. It is a complete lie to say that the industry has got the interests of workers in regional communities first, because we know from the leaked document that came from Tassal Group Limited, from the CIO in April 2017, that they are looking at reduction in labour, and by that they mean jobs. They're looking at calculated savings in labours, reducing labour costs through reducing the reduction in number of feeders that's required to save money between 2017 and 2025. They're looking at saving $45 million. These are people's jobs, Mr Deputy Speaker. Industries are doing that. This is the point. If you've got a government that's backing a resource extractive industry, and that's essentially what that is, because it's using our public waterways for a private business that is not putting anything in communities, that is not protecting the Clean Green brand, which is the basis of sustainable seafood, it's the basis of our sustainable agriculture, and if you've got a government that's not doing that, then we really want to understand whether it's the Labor Party supports that position as well, because the Labor Party has done everything it can to make sure that it ducks and weaves on this matter. But now we're getting to the pointy end of things. There's a federal election, Mr Deputy Speaker, and frankly, we're sick of the fact that the Labor Party is running for cover on this issue, because it was the Labor Party. It was the Labor Party that brought in the change to the Living Marine Resource Act. It was the Labor Party who gutted the Marine Farming Review Panel and made it impossible for scientific assessment to occur, independent science to be taken. To be given weight, because what we have now is scientists like Ms Louise Cherry and Dr Barbara Novak, who were forced to resign in protest last year from the Marine Farming Review Panel in disgust, and to maintain their integrity, their professional integrity, because they could no longer stand by and be involved, be used. Essentially, they could no longer be used to prop up a sham panel. A panel which is designed, it has an internal loop where it's not possible for that panel to make a recommendation not to approve an expansion. It's actually not possible for that to happen. The only way the panel can come to a conclusion is when they agree with what's being proposed by the industry and supported by the Minister. So the Marine Farming Review Panel needs to be outed for what it is. It's a sham. it's a corrupted process. It's been designed to rubber stamp the expansion of the industry on the industry's terms, and every single time, Mr Deputy Speaker, since 2004, when the Labor Premier, Brian Greene, changed the law, when he changed the law because a woman, a scientist on the Marine Farming Review panel, dared to reject a proposal by Tassal to go into 9-pin point to Soldiers Point. When that happened, the Labor Party understood that if they wanted, that they had a choice of supporting science, supporting community, supporting a sustainable marine environment, or doing what the industry wanted. So they changed the law. They changed the law, they gutted the panel, they made sure that would never happen again. So ever since then, 15 years later, here we are now, we've got an industry on steroids. We've clearly got a Liberal government who has jumped in and kept it all rolling, steamrolling ahead. But what we want to hear, Mr Deputy Speaker, from the Labor Party is, where does Labor stand on this now? Is Labor a party of opposition? Is Labor a party that stands up for the marine environment? Is Labor a party that stands up for the community? This is the party which says it puts the community first, it puts regional communities first, it puts the welfare of people first. If the Labor Party supports the people and want to give the people a voice, then the people have spoken in Tasmania, Mr Deputy Speaker. The people think this stinks. Once people actually understand that there is no process that can be used to stop the expansion of the salmon farming industry wherever it wants to go, wherever it chooses to go, there is actually no proper process that is left. You know, this government has effectively killed off. There is no way to hold industry to account for marine debris. There is essentially no enforcement. There has, I think, been $4,000 in fines for companies that make $40, $30, $50 million a year profit. It's nothing. It's not even like having 5 cents in the bottom of your bag. Like, it's just absolutely nothing. There is nothing, no pushback at all on the industry. So that's the position of the Liberals. What's the position of Labor? Does Labor stand up for the community? Does Labor care about process? Does Labor care about corrupted processes? Does Labor want to give people a voice? Does Labor care about science? Does the scientist, Mr. Broad, Dr. Broad, does Dr. Broad put science first? Well, we'd like to hear, Mr. Deputy Speaker, whether the Liberal Party and the Labor Party are intent to agree that the current stocking levels of salmon in Macquarie Harbour, the expansion of fish farming operations into Oakhampton Bay, the enlivening of the decade-old fish farm lease in Norfolk Bay, the exploration of fish farm expansions off King Island, and the large expansions of salmon farming into Storm Bay should be supported. Is this their position? We'd like to hear about it.
Speak, and I might be able to say.